Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. In our last episode, the Queen took an interest in getting the people into Christianity after seeing how the Germans behaved during the war. She was successful setting up a center for the education of the people. Next, the royal family went to South Africa. South Africa was a divided nation, and the English and the Dutch were both trying to sway the country to them. The royal family felt bad leaving England as their fellow countrymen were freezing during an unusually bitter winter. The king even wanted to fly back home, but the prime minister didn't think it was a good idea. Let's see what happens today. When they got near landfall in South Africa, the princesses found the trip exciting. They'd never been out of Britain before. Princess Elizabeth wrote her grandmother, "When I first caught my first glimpse of Table Mountain, I could hardly believe that there was anything could be so beautiful." When the ship reached land, a great cheer went up from the dockside. The Queen came ashore wearing an ice blue dress with floating panels bordered with South African ostrich feathers and a matching hat, also trimmed with feathers. The town was in a festive mood with bunting everywhere, and thousands more people crowded into the town from surrounding districts. The Queen, with her charm, had captured them all, Ted Grove wrote to his wife. There was a formal ceremony with a solemn procession of both houses of Parliament to present loyal addresses to the King and Queen at Government House. And in the first of many additions to the program, the King invested Field Marshal Smuts with the Order of Merit. There was a garden party at the Governor General's country home, Westbrook. Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret wore short frocks and were surprised the ladies of Cape Town were in long dresses. The Queen met their standards. She had the ostrich feathers not only on the sleeves of her gown and her hat, but also her parasol. The radio gave enthusiastic reports of their progress throughout the country. Enid Bagnold, the author of National Velvet, had come to South Africa to see the tour and stated that the radio commentator in Cape Town completely lost her head and kept shouting on the first day, "But she's lovely, oh, she's lovely," and the princesses, "Oh, they're lovely, lovely." All of them, especially the princesses, were amazed by the warmth of the sunshine as well as of the welcome. The princesses were also thrilled with the blue skies, the vibrant colors, and the abundant supply of food. The Queen said that as a young person growing up in the war, they were totally cut off from those sorts of things. They went to the races at Kenilworth for the Cape of Good Hope Derby, and the Queen and the princesses picked the winner. There was a ball for the non-European community, and the Queen was delighted by the cheerful interpretation of an old-fashioned quadrille. The family stayed on long after they should have departed. There was segregation there, and it couldn't be denied. There was also political divisions. They spent a day in the rural Cape visiting the wine-growing region. They were intensely nationalist and followed the old Dutch traditions. In Stellenbosch, no Union flag flew, and many of the Boers had refused to fight for the British crown during the war. The climax of their days on the Cape was the state opening of the Parliament by the King. They then went on to other provinces in South Africa. Their white train, or wittren, had engine drivers and stewards smartly dressed, and the train was painted silver and gold. The 14 coaches were fully air-conditioned and insulated against the heat and cold. The suites were wood-paneled and walnut veneer. Wireless and telephonic communication was built in. There was a carriage for household staff where the clerks of the private secretary's office could continue working on matters relating to home as well as to the tour. Mail was delivered and collected daily. Day after day, the train passed through beautiful countryside, farmland, vineyards, and ravines and across rivers. The train was a place of escape, but it was also a trap because it caused encounters at the station with no schedule set up, and this happened station after station, village after village. The family greeted enormous crowds of country people waiting by the line for them to pass by. Sometimes the train slowed through the little halts to give time for waving. On occasion, and at night, the princesses were already in their dressing gowns when they needed to appear at the door to wave. The Queen advised them to put on their jewelry, and that would make the dressing gowns look like long dresses. Queen Elizabeth told Queen Mary that the constant stopping was tiring, but they liked to do it because the people were so nice, and some came a long way, carrying babies and standing patiently for hours, and one meets the ordinary citizens this way. An ostrich farm at La Rue outside Oudtshoorn, and the Queen and the princesses cut tail feathers from an ostrich. The owner of the farm, Bassie Meyer, said that he hoped that the changing fashions in the USA and Britain would return to their pre-war prosperity, to ostrich farmers of South Africa. And to help with that, the Queen and the princesses made a point of incorporating ostrich feathers in many of their clothes. Getting rest was a problem. The Prime Minister Smuts saw the tour as political rather than recreational, and he worked his guests very hard. When they were by the Indian Ocean, they could sometimes bathe and have picnics on the shore, and the princesses tried to ride as often as they could, but most days were grueling. The rule for the royal tour was to keep Sunday as a day of rest and simple worship. In some districts, the drought had been unbroken for 3 years. The day after the royal party arrived, the rains came, and the king was seen as the rainmaker. In Natal, the royal family enjoyed a break in the Natal National Park hostel. There were flowers there, and it was a dazzling sight. The Queen wrote to her sister May that it was profusion and terrific colors, just took my breath away. But there was an unfortunate incident in Bonomi. The King and Queen were tired that day, and everyone was tense, according to Peter Townsend. The Queen saw a policeman rushing forward as another man sprinted up and grabbed hold of her car. The Queen saw a policeman rushing forward as another man sprinted up and grabbed hold of their car. The Queen misunderstood what was happening and thought it was an assault. She beat the man off with her parasol, breaking it. Come to find out, he was an ex-serviceman named Kaiser Saholi, and he was desperate to show the king his loyalty by giving him a sum of money, as was the custom of native tribesmen greeting their chief. Saholi meant no harm to anyone and was dragged off. The king and queen were aghast. The king asked Townsend to find out if the man was all right. I hope he was not too badly hurt. The Queen liked Durban. They were very English and Scottish there, and clung to the old links with Great Britain. The demands of the trip were relentless, and the Queen was concerned about the strain on the king. The welcomes were warm, but the king was always worrying about the conditions in Britain. The Queen wrote to Queen Mary, "The tour is being very strenuous, as I feared it would be, and doubly hard for Bertie, who feels he should be home. We think of home all the time. The king would get frustrated and lose his temper. He didn't like the enthusiastic way the Afrikaner police found them irksome, as did the rest of the family." The Cape Times apparently reported that on one country walk, the king remarked that he had shaken off the Gestapo at last. On other occasions, the king would become exhausted and irritated by the constant pressure of the crowds. The Queen would stroke his arm or his hand to calm him. Ted Grove commented that he didn't think the king could have got through it all without the love and devotion of the Queen. In public speeches, the king tried to remind his audiences of all that Britain had endured in the previous 8 years. He told Queen Mary that he felt the South Africans, whose lives were much more comfortable, should be reminded of the trials going on at home. He and the Queen and the princesses often were embarrassed by the amount of food that was always spread out before them. The Queen, she was tired too. She had genuine feelings, and the constant need to display them was exhausting. Ingrid Bagnold stood by the track to watch the white train pass by. Suddenly she saw the Queen in her garden dress sitting in the window. I waved, and she gave one more sickly wave like a dying duck, a sketch of her other waves. She looked as though she would die if she saw just one more woman to wave to. The Queen confessed to Elizabeth Elphinstone that I am rather gaga and tired, and it's a curious thing how driving through crowded streets full of eager people seems to draw the life out of one. It was quite a program that they had scheduled. They spent 35 nights on board a train. Many more miles were covered in a fleet of Daimlers in an aircraft. A longtime friend of the Queen said that it wasn't until the South African tour in 1947 that the king really began to enjoy flying. Both the king and the Queen understood the freedom, speed, and excitement offered by air travel. They liked communicating with one another on the intercom system when flying in separate planes. They flew up to the British colonies of northern and southern Rhodesia, where there was much less tension, in Salisbury. It was a real home, and they stayed in a government house, and the Queen was happy about it. She liked the governor, Major General Sir John Kennedy, and his wife, and Sir John remembered that he took the king out for a walk in the grounds of Government House, where there was a tree planted by King Edward VIII when he was Prince of Wales. The king stood and looked at it and said, "My brother never had the good fortune I had when I married my wife." Then they made a visit to the grave of Cecil Rhodes in Montebello Land on the stony hillside, and the heel of one of the Queen's high-heeled shoes broke. The press party made quite a show of the fact that Princess Elizabeth gave her shoes to her mother and completed the day in her stocking feet. "So like Mummy," said the princess, "to set out in those shoes." So I'll stop the video here. In this episode, we saw what a whirlwind of activity the king and queen and family were doing. They felt a bit guilty for being in South Africa when Britain was going through a record-breaking winter. The trip made everybody tired, and the king would snap and the queen would have to calm him down. The queen got tired, but she managed to hide it for the most part from the public. I look forward to seeing what happens next. I hope everybody enjoyed the video, and if you did, if you could give it a thumbs up, it would help my channel to grow, and I would really appreciate it. I created a list of merchandise from Amazon that I thought you might be interested in, and if you click on the link, it takes you to the Amazon page. If you purchase it, I get a small commission that's of no extra cost to you. But more than that, I wish everyone a good day, and I hope that you will tune in again soon for another episode of Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Thank you. Bye.